I'm joined today by colleagues from specifically Jeremy Emmy, the Housing Director for the Coalition for Rochester Area Housing, Dave Dunn from Olmsted County, which will provide a little bit of an update on the Maxfield report that was completed in 2019 that documents the housing needs for our community, as well as teammate Catherine Malmberg, the Director for Economic Development and Placemaking here at the DMC EDA. So specifically today, we're bringing forward a decision to support a DMC EDA recommendation providing $2.2 million of DMC funding for the Bryk Apartment Project. In summary, this $2.2 million request will help realize 180 units of mixed income housing commercial space directly adjacent to the downtown area of the city of Rochester. It sits along a major transit corridor, which we'll talk a little bit more about and have a map that I think will help solidify that. It's also within walking distance of downtown retail, major employment centers like Mayo Clinic in the downtown, within walking distance of car share service, most city bus lines, and the community trail system. So directly close by, a block to the east. At this point, I'll turn it over to Jeremy Emmy to speak to, just do a little bit ground setting on the Maxfield report and also the community housing needs. So Jeremy, are you here?
I am. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks.
Great. Well, so what we wanted to do, just kind of quickly go over some of the terminology we'll be using and now and moving forward. So we've kind of taken some of the more colloquial terms around affordable housing and as well as income levels and tried to kind of create definitions for the community. There are no kind of national standards for a lot of the wording that we use around affordable housing. So our county, as you may be aware, has a relatively high median income, and this is for a family of four or a household of four of around $103,000 toward the right here. We consider affordable home ownership those earning about 60% of area median income through 100%. And you'll see there's a fair amount of overlap here, and again, that's because of the nature of the terminology. Many different sectors use this wording in different ways. Workforce housing in general is 50% of AMI through about 80%, which in our county is just under 79 or around 79,000. And then public housing, which is essentially from extremely low income to about 50% of AMI. It is worth noting that area median income is the halfway point. So half the households earn more, half earn less. Once you stray from that 100% AMI number, the numbers aren't quite what they would be mathematically. So when you look at 50% of AMI, statistically that would mean 25% of households are under that number. We computed in Olmsted County about 30% of the households are under 50% AMI, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have on that. And then we have the extremely low, which is 30% of AMI and under, which is supported housing. Next slide, please. And then we work to define housing as opposed to just kind of the type of housing related to income. So affordable housing, we're looking at folks who are paying no more than 30% of their gross income. So that can be a pretty wide array of housing. Workforce housing is more related to income, just pure income without the 30% of gross income for housing costs. Those are usually folks around the area median income, usually about 50% up to 100%. And then market rate housing, of course, is those at about 100% of AMI or above. No rent restrictions, no subsidies, no assistance used in the building of those projects. Next slide. So what we did in the Coalition for Rochester Area Housing is we took the Maxfield report, which was completed in November of 2020, and we pulled out 5 housing priorities for Olmsted County and Greater Rochester. So those include, or those are, creating new home ownership opportunities as opposed to rentals, increasing home ownership for Black, Indigenous, and people of color in our county. White home ownership is at about 77%. Black and African American is about 22%, and Latino, Latinx Hispanic is about 45%, so there's a huge racial disparity in the county. Number 3 is creating housing for people at 50% of AMI or less, which I mentioned is actually about 30% of households, not 25%. Enhancing housing options for seniors. The Maxfield report found that there's a huge demand, actually a pent-up demand for senior housing. And as the boomers are becoming older, that demand will increase over the next decade. And then preserving affordable housing stock, or otherwise called naturally occurring affordable housing. We know that our largest reserve of affordable housing is in the housing that's already built or has been built in the past decades. So we'll be working to preserve that. And then this is just a slide that was created to kind of show where the Bryk project fits in here. So in Olmsted County, we'll need over 3,000 new units in the next decade that are affordable or subsidized. Within the city of Rochester, about 2,300, downtown 1,200, and then the Bryk would be contributing 180 units. And it's worth mentioning also that the study found that we'll need about 18,000 new units countywide, so that means a little bit more than 1 in 6 units will have to be affordable in the county.
Great, thank you, Jeremy, for providing that background. And if you could stick around in case there are questions at the end of the presentation, that'd be great.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So then from here, we wanted to provide a little bit of context about the Bryk project itself. So we'll talk about some of the aspects of the project, also go through the financial analysis with which Catherine Malmberg will lead. But specifically where we sit in space, or where the project sits in space, is at the corner of Broadway Avenue and Civic Center Drive. Broadway Avenue has been identified as a transit corridor within the city of Rochester. And one of the intents is to increase density along this in order to support future transit options along this streetway. So the specific site is this yellow parcel here. We're looking at it facing towards the west. The First Avenue Flats project is in the distance, and it's really on this parcel that we see right in front. A few more project details. So it is a mixed-use apartment building that would contain 180 workforce housing units, with the kind of breakdown of those unit counts provided on the screen in front of us between 50%, 60%, and 80% AMI. And finally, there is a commercial space plan for the ground level, around 7,200 square feet. Still determining the commercial tenant for that. A few more details. The total investment for the project is $39.3 million. Significant construction job and permanent job impact. And part of the analysis, we asked the developer to comprise the eligible public infrastructure costs as it relates to the DMC legislation, which totaled around $10.9 million and is broken down on the slide here between site remediation, utilities, parking, facade improvements, corridor landscaping, and intermodal infrastructure. We also find that the project provides significant community benefits beyond the workforce housing we mentioned. It is repairing and improving a site on a major transit corridor within the city of Rochester. We worked with the project team to meet the sustainability performance goals, which we'll talk about a little bit more in detail. It is subject to the targeted business requirements that this body approved for the DMC project, and then the goals that they set for the community last year are updated. And then finally, you mentioned the walkability to downtown, both the retail center, the employment center, but also the community trail system that's a block to the east. So one other term we wanted to introduce was the concept of affordable living. So the rents that you pay at a housing complex matter, but we also see some additional benefits of this specific housing development, given that it's within walking distance of major busways, bus transit networks, as well as the biking and walking trails. And then another additional benefit are the lower utility costs associated with the sustainable performance requirements tied to the DMC legislation. So the expected energy performance of this housing development is about 66% better than what a code building would have been built to, which has a significant impact on the utility bills that the tenants will pay as a result of living there. So we see the Bryk project achieving all kind of 3 of these buckets: lower rents, adjacency to high amenity transit, as well as lower utility costs moving forward. From here, I want to introduce my colleague and teammate, Catherine Malmberg, to talk about the project financial analysis. Catherine.
Good morning. Thanks so much, Kevin. So I was going to walk through here the process of what the DMC staff did to review this project and arrive at our recommendation of support for the project. So the first step that we really take is a confirmation of the key project assumptions. So we receive a complete pro forma from the developer. We build our own pro forma to do our own analysis, and we also review their construction pricing and updates to that pricing alongside the development plan and the drawing set. And so we first look at their construction costs and benchmark that to other projects in the market that we are familiar with. And we see that this project is coming in at around $165,000 a unit, which is comparable or slightly below some of the recent projects that have been delivered in the market. The lease-up rate, we analyze their projections for how this project will be leased, and again, tie that back to what we see in the market and what we think comparable projects are doing. We look at their return expectations and mark those to market as well. And we look at the rental rate, in this case, gap analysis. So we took the 50 and 60% AMI units and looked at how much rent the owner would be forgoing over the 30-year period of affordability, which in this case comes in at about $8.7 million of future income. And use that as another data point when we think about the level of support we're willing to give this project. We also look at, as Kevin mentioned, what components of the project are eligible as public infrastructure under the legislation. So that's the kind of core of our financial analysis of the project. Then we work with our own DMC district design guidelines and complete a review of the project for compliance with those guidelines, and collaborated with our city colleagues who were in the process of revising the TOD zoning to ensure that this project meets all of the city's goals for their TOD zoned projects. Kevin also leads the sustainability component of what we're asking the project to do. So a project of this size and this location has a energy performance goal and target that they have to demonstrate through energy modeling they will meet. And then after the project is open, they will be reporting their data to see that they're meeting the projected goals. And then finally, our board, the DMC EDA board, reviewed this and also agreed with the staff recommendation to bring this forward to recommend supporting the project. Next slide. There we go. And so here are the funding sources. And again, these numbers are, going to fluctuate a little bit, but we're fairly honed in on where these targets are for the total project cost. And so this shows the division of different sources. So they are receiving a roughly $850,000 GEED grant for brownfield cleanup. What we're proposing is $2.2 million of DMC funding, and the city TIF note is $2.237 million. The developer is putting in $6 million of their own equity, and then a couple of private debt sources will comprise the balance there. So that's primarily a senior mortgage, but there is also potentially some PACE financing and a sort of TIF loan that might be kind of brought together to form that roughly 70% of the project funding sources. So that's the capital stack. Next. So to frame this, I guess within the larger picture, I think I'm handing this back over to Kevin, although I'm happy to talk through it as well.
Sure, I can take it, Catherine, thanks. So yeah, where this leaves us is with a funding request of $2.2 million in general state infrastructure aid to support the Bryk projects. There have been a number of kind of past board decisions that have led us toward this recommendation. One kind of a approximate value of support around $200 million of public infrastructure support for phase 2 between the years of 2020 and 2025. Previously, the board anticipated roughly 25 to 45 million of this would be directed toward private development support. Specifically in the 2021 capital plan, the DMC approved $7 million of private development support this year, and then the Bryk project is coming in at $2.2 million of that $7 million support for this year's budget. So the timeline moving forward, here we are, recommendation to the board on March 23rd. From here, it would be directed to City Council on April 5th, with an anticipated construction start this summer, and ideally, hopefully open for occupancy in December 2022. With that, we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Mike Doherty, what are you aware of? Are you aware of any? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Are you aware of?
If you could take the screen down so we can see each other. Go ahead, Mike.
Are you aware of any projects coming down? What projects are you aware of coming down the road? Let's say that we'd be in front of us in the next 12 months.
On affordable housing or in general?
General, including affordable. I want to know what our plate looks like.
Yeah, Patrick, would you like to take that question?
Yeah. Oh, I see. So Jim, Member Doherty, what you're asking is to try to prioritize this up against others. Is that how I hear that question?
I'd just like to know what's coming down the road.
All right, got it. Thank you. Patrick.
I don't like doing one-offs.
Yes. Mr. Chair, Member Doherty, thank you. An excellent question. So this particular project, we have been working on for 6 months and has been introduced at different stages. And I say that because our strategy with the board is to try to introduce projects as early as possible so we can begin to see the portfolio that's emerging. I would just say that there isn't anything else at this stage of maturity. We are in early conversations with continued advancement of Discovery Square, given momentum with 2 Discovery Square, but there isn't anything else at this stage of maturity.
Mike, can I also say that the question you're asking is at the core of what Pam Wheelock raised at the last meeting, and that, as I said, we're working with Patrick on giving us better tools to put these things up against other projects. I do want to say that we need to call that question. Just in my own sense, this project has been a goal for a long time. So it is certainly not the first to be passed without that, but hopefully one of the last. Other comments, Pam Wheelock?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know that we're going to spend some more time on that question about opportunity costs at the May meeting and as we move forward. So thank you for that. I'm just really excited about this project. I think this workforce housing investment in the DMZ zone is a critical element to achieving our economic development goals. And I presume, first of all, I'd say that. Secondly, I would thank Kevin for talking about affordable living in conjunction with affordable housing and really broadening that concept. I think that's very valuable, and we should keep an eye on that as we think about these investments. I am presuming, and that's always a dangerous thing, that absent the TIF and the DMC funding, that this project may well move forward, but it would have a higher rate of, it would fill that gap by having more market rate housing, and so we would be sacrificing the affordability levels. But I guess my question is kind of a what if. What if we didn't provide or fill this gap? What are we assuming would be occurring?
And Kevin, do you want to take that, or Patrick?
Well, let me first respond. Again, thank you, Member Wheelock. I think that's an excellent question, and really the starting point that we have with all of development projects as they come forward, and it's the purpose of the financial due diligence we do to assess rate of return and operating pro forma assumptions, et cetera. And I would just say that, and I do want to acknowledge the developer. Sometimes they don't get the kind of visibility, at least in this forum, that they ought to have. And I believe they're on and listening. And I just want to acknowledge It's a local family, very committed to Rochester, and came to us with this vision for contributing in a new way to Rochester through affordable workforce housing. And I think they could have gone a market rate direction. And as Catherine suggested, they are foregoing more than $8 million of rent by not going a market rate direction. And so in our own assessment, we do not believe this project could deliver on the board's goal of workforce housing, particularly at that 50% level, without support both from the city and DMC. And I would just say that the developer has been a key partner in bringing us to a point where we can make this recommendation.
Other comments?
This is Council President Carlson. I have a couple comments.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. So on that point, Patrick made, one of the great things about Rochester being a small big town or big small town is that those of us who grew up here knew one another pretty well. So it's really wonderful to see a family that I grew up with and have known for a very long time committing to our community in this new way. So I just wanted to give a shout out to our developers as well. A couple other comments. I bang that drum on affordable living all the time, and I think it absolutely is essential to how we think about our development as a community. And so really appreciate, Kevin, you incorporating that. I would take it up a notch and say a couple of the other things I think about are easy access to affordable food, so grocery stores and safe places for recreation, so connected to our parks and trails like you called out, but also this issue of childcare. So if I haven't brought it up enough, I will continue to bring up the integral role that childcare, affordable quality childcare plays in making sure that people have what they need to live healthy, productive, thriving lives, and including women being successful in the workforce, which is such a problem. It has been elevated as such a challenge during COVID. So in talking to the developer, one of their priorities for the commercial space is exploring the opportunity to either have a grocery or to have possibly infant childcare because of the lack of outdoor space. Having a center specifically focused on infants that need less room would make a lot of sense. So I just wanted to call that out. We have great connections for those of us around this table, but also those who may be listening in that could maybe make some of those opportunities real. And I think that that would be just an exceptional addition to that specific location. Finally, it's just really wonderful to see Jeremy and Dave and all of you referencing the Maxfield study, as this is such a guiding, I mean, it's not perfect, but it's a really important guiding document for thinking about those spaces we can be most responsive to our community needs. So the 50% or less absolutely represented in this. And from my perspective as a city council person and as a DMC board member, absolutely worth the investment, whether we knew what was in our total plan or not. Workforce housing, affordable housing has to be part of what we are contributing resources to. So I fully support this and look forward to working on these other goals that are, or other areas of need outlined in the Maxfield study. Thank you.
I see Paul. Terry Smith, I see your hand up. Were you answering a question? Terry?
Board Chair Ryback, I will yield to the board members, but after the board members have spoken, I would just like to make a comment.
Got it. Okay, Paul?
And Council President Carlson really captured a number of the things that I wanted to say ditto to. But one, I keep pinching myself. And for the last 6 months watching this come forward, I think it's phenomenal to have a private developer willing to put their equity on the line in developing affordable workforce housing. In the broader community development world, we would kill for this opportunity and this solution. So fabulous. And the solution to our supply problem will not come from nonprofits and public housing. It has to come from the private sector to really do this at scale. And I just really bravo to the developers, to the family that's working on this. Second question, just around that but-for test, in terms of the use of public dollars or DMC dollars in this, we should be asking that question. I know we asked that question with all of the developments. And to this point, we've been subsidizing private developments all over town quite effectively. So again, bravo that we are subsidizing private development. And this gets to my third question, which is the what's in it for me, right? What's in it for me in this community is this is all about worker bees, right? Even that family of four at 80% of median income, these are worker bees. This is a family of four earning $50,000 a year, perhaps a medical assistant, a lab tech, retail workers, distribution folks. These are the heart and soul of, I think, of any community. So bravo that we are using these resources to provide for folks who live in this community and have been here for a long time. I think it's just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity all the way around.
Terrific. Terry, do you want to answer the question you had, Holden?
Thank you, Board Chair Ryback. First off, yeah, I think someone had mentioned that kind of question about the but-for. And just to make you aware, obviously, if there's public assistance going into the project, that is one of the key elements that we certainly look at, as both the city and the DMC EDA. Catherine, Kevin, and the DMC EDA team work closely with us and the city's financial consultant, Baker Tilly, who will be actually putting together or is putting together what we refer to as a but-for letter, analysis letter, and we just didn't have it in time to include in your board packet today, but that is definitely a key element in projects like this. And then secondly, I also want to acknowledge Dirk, John, Kyle, and the Bryk team. I've known John for many years. He's done developments in the city, and now Dirk is jumping into that role as well. And it's been a real pleasure to work with them. They've been very responsive to the city and the EDA as we've worked through the process with them. Anytime there's been questions or information needed, they've been very forthcoming and expedient in getting that information so that we could kind of keep the ball rolling on this. And then lastly, in my role in the city, I am in a transition period right now. And so in this particular instance with this project, I really have to tip my cap to Kevin and Catherine. They really shepherded this project through from when we started discussing this project with the development team to where we're at today. I've been trying to put a few other things to bed here lately, and so I haven't probably spent as much time as I typically would being involved in the project. So I really want to thank Kevin and Catherine for all their hard work, and then again, obviously, the Bryk development team. We do intend to bring this forward to the city council, or actually the city EDA, on April 5th for their approval of the tax increment financing plan and the development assistance agreement that we are finalizing as we speak today. That's all I have for now, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks very much, Jim Campbell.
Well, I happen to have read the Maxfield report, and that really lays out clearly the need. And so this is very exciting. This project is just fantastic, and I'd like to thank the family, the developers, for being creative and working so collaboratively with us. One thing I would like is if someone could send me the deck, a copy of the deck that you used to describe this project. It would really be helpful because it delineates the various components of affordable housing, which candidly, affordable housing is a large bucket. And I think you prepared some information for me that I really have not seen before. And so if someone could shoot that to me, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. And people should know that Jim Campbell has been at this affordable housing biz for a long, long time. And I really want to echo that Jeremy and the coalition and all of you, thank you for putting this in the context. And it should be also a reminder that we are addressing one piece of the continuum. And we're going to have to keep our eyes on the entire continuum on this. we also should remember right now, we made a very intentional decision that in the early years, we were going to have to give some market rate projects some boost until the market caught its momentum, which it has. And then we said, now we're going to turn more toward two issues that had not been on our original issue, which is workforce development and affordable housing. And this is a deliverance on a promise we made several years ago to say that we were going to move on this. So it's something that we want to continue to do, and of course, including the transit village and everything else. Did you hear that other shameless plug for the transit village? Okay, with all of that, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, did you get that, Kathleen?
I got Wheelock and Norton, is that right?
Carlson.
Or close
Carlson.
enough?
Yep.
I'm sorry, Carlson. All right,
I mean,
all right.
We'll just keep going.
All right,
Okay, call the roll.
all right, Mr. Chair, Beer,
Aye.
Campbell,
Aye.
Carlson,
aye.
Doherty,
Aye.
Norton. Aye. Ryback,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Wheelock. Aye. Mr. Chair, there are 8 yeas and 0 nays.